On today's show, I want to talk about Raheem Morris's press conference yesterday because I've got some takeaways from it, and I also want to dive into the quarterback position because he was asked about what he looks for in a quarterback, and his response was not very lengthy, but we can kind of decipher and read between the lines a little bit as to who Raheem might be targeting for his next starting quarterback. So, let's dive right into it because here's what he said on what he looks for in a quarterback. Elite processors. When you get those guys that are decision makers, when you get those guys who can just cut it loose and play ball, and also play with great fundamental techniques, the base, the balance, the short hitches in the pocket. Now, that somewhat summarizes every good quarterback. That's not going to give you an extremely in-depth analysis as to what Raheem is looking for other than he wants a good quarterback. But that first word, he said, right? First few words, elite processors. Okay. Well, if we look at the three quarterback routes for Atlanta this offseason, you've got the NFL draft, you've got free agency, and I fully expect Russell Wilson to be released and become a free agent. And then you've got the trade route, which is basically just Justin Fields. So the NFL draft route is an interesting one because you can find guys who meet all those criterias, but you might not find it at pick number 8, right? There's a pretty good chance, let's be honest, Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jane Daniels are all picked by then. So you might kind of put a pin in draft for a second here. How about free agency and trade? Let's talk about Russell Wilson because I think he would make the most sense of all the free agent quarterbacks. And when I think about what Russell Wilson does really well, go back to his days in Seattle because that's what he's best known for now. It was what he did out of the pocket, right? When plays broke down, when the script wasn't there, his ability to be a magician, to improvise, to extend plays and chuck up a moon ball to Doug Baldwin or Tyler Lockett. Is that elite processors? My eyes, not so much. He's got great football IQ. He's been in the league for a long time. He can read a defense well, but that's not really what I think you'd write down under Russell Wilson's strengths. And then we have to talk about Justin Fields, who has great traits, right? And we're actually just beyond traits, actually. He has completely exercised these traits. He's awesome with the football in his hands when he's running the ball. He has a great vertical pass to his game. He's got downfield accuracy. He does all those things very well. Now, the processing, that's somewhat been a knock of his through 3 seasons, right? The inability to get the ball out of his hands super quickly. Sometimes knowing the best play is not trying to go for the home run or just taking what the defense gives you. So when we look at Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, look at their stats from last season, and neither quarterback just box score-wise jumps off the page as that's the guy I want being the next Atlanta Falcons quarterback. Russell Wilson had a really nice touchdown to interception ratio, 26-8, but they could not buy a yard in the second half until the fourth quarter rolled around, and Russell Wilson just inevitably said, F it, I'm going to do it my way, and just kind of chucked balls up there, and Sean Payton didn't really like that, so now we see why the divorce is being finalized in Denver. Now, if you were to pick a quarterback between Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, who would you pick? If I'm Raheem Morris, and ultimately, that's what is most important here, because sure, I can give you what I would think I would do, but I'm not the one in charge. But if I were Raheem Morris, or if I was predicting what Raheem Morris would do, I think based off that answer, Justin Fields is more likely your answer to this question about who the next Atlanta Falcons quarterback could be. Because imagine this offense. I mean, I know we can kind of substitute the quarterback and it's still an awesome offense, but Bijan, Drake London, a free agent wide receiver. And I put that because, well, if you go free agency to fill your wide receiver void, which you have a major void at because Drake London is the only player under contract at that position to return in 2024. If you go T. Higgins, Marquise Brown, Mike Evans, any of these other, any of these big name wide receivers on the market, Michael Pittman, well, put Justin Fields with that running back, with those wide receivers, with this tight end, and then you've got the number 8 overall pick in the draft to go out and get the best pass rusher on your big board, because I think there is a very realistic chance that if Atlanta fulfills its quarterback need before the draft rolls around, that 8th overall pick may very well be the number 1 defensive end. And fingers crossed, but hopefully, Atlanta finds a solution to the problem they have been trying to solve for almost its entire history: finding a pass rusher, finding a guy who can do more than just one season of Vic Beasley, right? Trying to find a homegrown talent, not getting John Abraham. If the post-combine comes around, or when the post-combine comes around, and it is clear to everyone in league circles, because the NFL Combine is good for more than just watching guys in tights run 40-yard dashes. All the GMs, all the head coaches, they go to St. Elmo Steakhouse, and they talk about what's really going to go down over the next 6 weeks or so. And that gives GMs and head coaches a good idea of what to expect when the draft rolls around, because free agency comes before the draft, and you might fulfill a lot of your needs in free agency, and that could change your draft strategy. But if, when the combine wraps up, it is clear that we are going to see quarterbacks go 1, 2, and 3 in the 2024 NFL Draft, then we are going to learn what Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot's plan is at quarterback, because I don't think their plan to fulfill quarterback will be through the draft if they know there's not a chance the Bears, the Commanders, or the Patriots are going to trade out of their top 3 picks, or any of those top 3 QBs are going to fall out of the top 3. Now, we're going to expand on that in just a moment, but really quickly, a quick shout out to our sponsor today, Prize Picks. Now, you might be wondering, what is Prize Picks? It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Now, we've got the big game coming up this weekend, and I want you guys to have as much fun as possible while watching it. So, if you want to tap into the Prize Picks game, here's how it works. You just choose 2 to 6 players, and then pick more or less on their projected stats. Now, Prize Picks loves the Dirty Birds so much, they are putting Patrick Mahomes' stat projection for passing yards at 0.5. I'm going to go on a limb here and say I like them more on that one. And then I like them more on Isaiah Pacheco at half for a rushing or receiving touchdown. And finally, I like them more on Brock Purdy's passing yards at 248.5. It's the last game of the season. Got to go live in the more. So if you like my selections, hopefully you like the Patrick Mahomes one at least, go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Now, because I love you guys so much, I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. So make sure you get started with Prize Picks today and use that link and that promo code CLNS to get a first-time deposit match up to $100. That's Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Now, for those of you that want to hold and cling on to the hope of drafting Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels, we all saw the Commanders hire Cliff Kingsbury as their offensive coordinator, and that got a lot of people talking about, hey, could the Commanders move up to number 1, reunite Cliff and Caleb Williams, plus Caleb Williams from D.C. It could be a perfect homecoming. So it kind of got me thinking, 1, it takes 2 to trade. I don't think the Bears are interested in trading out of the number 1 pick. But if the Bears do decide after an exhaustive search of what to do at the quarterback position, they land on Justin Fields is our guy. Now let's build around him. We could see the Bears go from 1st overall to 2nd overall. And in exchange for moving back 1 spot, they know they've got the golden ticket. So they could hold it at a high ransom. And the Commanders fork over a future first and a 2nd rounder, which is ironic because it's actually the Bears' 2nd rounder that they gave Washington for Montez Sweat. So they could get Montez Sweat for basically nothing. But if that were to go down, I still don't see why or how Atlanta could go from 8 to 1, because why would Chicago opt to go back from 1 to 8 when they could just go from 1 to 2? But if they do go back from 1 to 2, they're still not picking a quarterback, right? And this is where I think Atlanta could potentially strike. Not by going from 1 to 8. No, there are going to be other teams who can make better offers. But what if, when the Bears are at number 2, they're still not picking a quarterback, otherwise they would have stayed at number 1. Atlanta picks up the phone and goes, hey, how about you go from 2 to 8, and in exchange, we'll give you a future first and a future 2nd. I know that's a bit steep right there. You're giving up next year's first, next year's 2nd to go from 8 to 2. I understand that. But if you truly do believe that Drake May or Jaden Daniels is going to be the quarterback of your future, you pull the trigger on that deal because there are much bigger trades that have gone down, and you can suffice by not giving up, by only giving up a future first and a future second. So I understand that's a decent haul right there to go from 8 to 2, but that's the price of doing business when you've got a QB stacked draft class. Like I said, it takes 2 to trade. I think the Bears, the Commanders, and the Patriots, when all said and done, are going to want to stay at their respective spots and take a quarterback. It would not be the first time, by the way, we have seen a quarterback go 1, 2, and 3. I did the research. It happened, if you remember, just a few short years ago in 2021 when Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson and Trey Lance all went 1, 2, and 3. Before that, 1999, Tim Couch and Donovan McNabb went 1 and 2. And then you got 1971. You got Plunkett going to the Patriots. You got the first Manning, by the way, going to the Saints. And then you got whoever that guy is. So it has happened before. So if you're thinking there's no way we're going to see QBs go 1, 2, and 3, history says it's not common, but it's not impossible. But let me know. Will the Falcons trade up? Let me know yes or no down below in the comment section. To wrap up the show, I do want to talk about the other 45-ish minutes of Raheem Morris's press conference. Unfortunately, Arthur Blank was not able to attend. He was dealing with a minor health episode, they described it, but they said he is feeling much better, so fingers crossed everything is okay with Mr. Blank. But let's go through the other takeaways I've got. First one was, Raheem Morris really harped on the jealousy he had of the incredible relationship that Sean McVay and Les Snead, head coach and GM of the Rams, share together. And he wants to have that kind of relationship in Atlanta. And we've also seen some rumors come out of ultimately Belichick and the Falcons were not going to work because Bill wanted more control than Atlanta was willing to give. And Raheem Morris comes in not as a guy trying to get rid of Terry Fontenot, but as a guy who wants to be married to Terry Fontenot. So that was one big takeaway I had. Second one, fantasy owners, rejoice. When I almost put myself in a hole right there. When Raheem Morris was asked about, hey, what are you excited about this Falcons team? He point blank said, Bijan Robinson, Drake London. So for everyone watching right now that was pissed off with the lack of usage for Atlanta Stars for your fantasy team, this would be a good year to maybe move up around on some of those players. Third takeaway, high praise for Zac Robinson. He talked about his staff and talking about how that is priority number one to build a coaching staff, and then they'll get to free agency. But he really loved the hiring of Zac Robinson. He sees him as the next kind of big young shot OC that, who knows, maybe a year or two from now, he could be getting head coaching interviews. So there were a lot of praises going around for the staff members, but Zac Robinson definitely was on the beneficiary end of a lot of that. Takeaway number 4. Jimmy Lake is calling plays for the Falcons defense. This one caught me a little bit off guard. Raheem Morris has a long background on the defensive side of the football, but he's also coached on the offense, which I really like about him. So Jimmy Lake, who was the assistant head coach for the Rams last year, former Washington Huskies DC, and then eventually head coach, he is calling the plays so Raheem Morris can focus more on both ends of the football. And goal number 5, goal is to win the South. I mean, he point blank said, the goal is to win the NFC South. And what I look for as a fan, just in general, is I want to see my team compete and win in the division and win home games. And the Falcons have done an okay job of winning home games under Arthur Smith, but the division, that was missing. And that needs to return for Raheem Morris. He also, by the way, just commanded the room. It was a low-level comedy night for Raheem Morris. The guy was cracking jokes. He was making jabs. He was having fun with the reporters. It was a really fun and lively press conference. So if you missed the whole thing, you can walk away from it knowing that Raheem Morris really dominated the room, and he showed why everyone that's ever worked for him just loves working with him. He seems like an incredible human being. Now, that's going to do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of Falcons Today. We will sign off and catch up later.